Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Twice in one day. For what? I'm testing this out. I just was able to get this StreamYard for even less than I paid for it last year. So I figured I'd give her a wait. There you go. I'd give it a whirl. And so anybody that's in here, just know that this is no specific topic. Idaho4 Oh My, right? Like Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. Oh my. Let's see. I do have the capacity to go over some of the comments of some of the other streams. Maybe that wouldn't be a bad idea. I hope my microphone's working. My $8 microphone. At this point, all I can say is I'm pretty proud of this $8 purchase. What do we got in here? We got 6 people watching. No one's saying hello. Nobody. They're all hiding somewhere. Let's see. I do have community guideline warning and strikes or something. And what was it for? Oops, retry. I don't think it's going to share with me why it gave me a strike. But YouTube, I don't give a fuck about your strike. Let's see here. Published videos. Comments. Here's a comment. I thought this was a pretty cool comment. It said, dude. Okay. Stop with this bullshit. It said, dude, you got the perfect radio voice. Man, oh man. What's happening there, Alicia? So I was told in a comment that I have the perfect radio voice. That isn't like a slight to suggest that I look like I belong on the radio, is it? Oh, that would be funny. Hide your face, but you got a good voice. Oh, I really didn't have any particular topic. I was, it's been raining. It's been ugly. It's humid out there and ugly. And, oh my God. What up there, Thomas? Sharp. But I guess what this stream is going to be. Let's see here. What's it going to be? Anything the chat room wants to make a topic out of. That's what it's going to be about. I'll review some of these comments and share with you what people have said. Someone said the way you explain things is top notch. May you do a video on Othram. Said, hi, Sarge. Always catch you late. Love your commentary. I tune in from Ireland. Well, welcome, Ireland. Sarge, glad you're back. Going over things. Love hearing your voice, words, and humor again. Thank you. Enjoying your continued thoughts on this case. I should probably read the name of the people doing it. See, I've never done this before. Someone said, Yavana people said that vehicle had fog lights. So I'm going to start and read this from the top. Rusty Sheckfield. Dude, you got a perfect radio voice. Over checking YouTube. The way you explain things is top notch. They want me to do stuff with the IGG. Wolfie333RD. Hi, Sarge. Always catch you late. Tuning in from Ireland. Check the guy at the end of Santa's table. He always has no clue what's going on. So he's talking about the prosecution's group of fucking minions. Miss Epity Crocker says, Sarge, I'm glad you're back. And we're going over things. Love hearing your voice, words, and humor again. K2 1965. Enjoying your continued thoughts on the case. Glad you jumped back in. I also enjoy your Generation X outlook on life. People don't hear our generation enough. We see the world in a unique way of reality and poetry, especially when it comes to our country and our hope for all humanity to experience it justly. There you go. I appreciate that. I mean, I can make comments to these people. Didn't even know it. Look at all the little features I have here on YouTube. Man, oh man, I feel special. And not just special ed either. I feel a little bit different than the special ed that I'm typically, referred to. What do you think Ann threatened him with to take the plea? That's what I want to know. What a mean woman. I don't think she threatened him in the sense that people consider a threat. I think she advised him that they were going to lose at trial and he would face the death penalty, and this was the best way to ensure avoiding the death penalty. That's my personal opinion. I say that because I've had multiple lawyers make that recommendation to me of taking a plea deal. And what I want you to realize is that for Ann, that's just the way these people are trained. It's not, it's not like she's being mean or she's, holding a gun to the guy's head. Sadly, that's how our judicial system works. Everything is a fucking plea deal. And, truth be damned. I'm going to threaten you with such a severe consequence that you're going to take a plea deal to a different charge and feel like you won something, but you're going to, you know what you won? You won a cage. That's what you won. You won to live in a cage. Okay? With some of the worst people in society around you. That's your fucking prize there, Brian. Thank you for joining, Mr. Kohlberger, to the justice system. The justice system is always right. That's the game you're playing. And there are not many fucking winners that play the game. The justice system is always right. Kendra Kitten. Good morning, Sarge. Replay gang. Get me through a few hours of work this morning. Let's see here. Let me see here. So Susan B, 66. Are you really 66, Susan? Is that what that name says? I don't think so. Not based on your picture. Regarding the statement made by Dylan, that she heard a girl crying in the bathroom and a male voice say, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." First, consider the fight that took place in Zana's room. So obviously fought for her life. Whoever killed Zana had a difficult dispatching her quickly and may themselves have been injured or exhausted. That said, is it outside the realm of possibilities that the help you comment was not directed at a victim, instead to another attacker? Possibly. It can also be possible that the female attacker was the girl Dylan heard crying. Possibly. Yeah, that's a decent take. Yeah, what the hell? Why not? We see we got Alicia in here. We got Thomas in here. I can't even tell. I got to jump back and forth. What else do we got here? Do you think they were stabbed elsewhere? No, I don't think Susan Aurora 8. I don't think they were stabbed somewhere else. Just listening. He was reliving his past by being a DJ and playing music. I don't know what that is. Huh. Oh, maybe she's referring to Birdie or something. I don't know. So mind your business. Your business. The question is, whose feathers did he ruffle? Who decided to report and report and report? I just went to his channel and it was fine. It was not alive, but everything else worked. That's referring to Dago. A few days ago when his channel was like kicked off the air. Now, someone a suggestion. William 59, Cy Ray, works for law enforcement. Having him in the defense room is a conflict of interest. He was never there to help the defense, but to gather information for the prosecution. Public defenders are paid by the state and consistently plea out cases, not working in the best interest of the accused. I agree with that 100%. 11, let's see. Warning. Yeah, I don't know why people just can't call themselves Dave, Tom, Barbara, Diane, Kelly. I don't know where all these names come from. You can't read them. Had car broke into in March 2026. Body cam shows were telling law enforcement she ordered Ring cameras. The camera footage would show Jack D going into his apartment, the back patio, and the girls walking Murphy. That's interesting. If guilty, show public proof by Caroline Prestige, 4650. Miss Eppie Crocker. I do believe Hitler and Judge overstepped and played all roles of the court versus being the darn judges and sticking to what the judge is there for. Hitler especially played DA, defense, and jury. Gary M7R. Super Sarge explained it well. Brian drives in the Hitler zone. Wonder how Sergeant Friday sees the control system coming. Not sure what you mean there, Gary. Fair hearing for Brian Kohlberger and la. This one person counted a lot. Says he's old. He would have, if he was attacked by Kohlberger, he'd have been smashed. Girls would have ripped it off his face, just saying. He wasn't there. Carlos guy says he thinks he did it, but wouldn't convict on the evidence. I don't like to call it through time. I used to just call it. You want to watch murder? The ID Network. But I've been watching investigative murder since I should have been like 8 years old. Watching Rescue 9/11. That's Regina Falinja. I don't know if that's the right way to say any of these names. Oh no, is something happened to Dago? So yeah, a lot of different comments here, folks. I don't know really what much to add to this particular moment in time for Kohlberger. He filed for his intent to appeal. I think that if we review the case and some of the statements in his pro se, or pro se, however you want to say that, are indicating that he was lied to, misled, made promises that weren't true, and I think he's going to have to bear the weight to show that. I'm not so sure how Hitler's going to contend with that. I do think the accumulative effect applied to his decision. You know, that's that's a hell of a situation to be in. You know, and you know, people that are out there insistent that he did it. Well, let me just say a couple of things about Mr. Koberger that are pretty evident that I think all of us are witness to, but don't or maybe do not think it through. We've never heard a word from Brian Koberger. Brian Koberger never acted inappropriate in court. Brian Koberger didn't sneer or look threatening. Brian Koberger maintained his silence consistently, never breaking that. Brian Koberger never put anything in any communication that referred to his innocence or guilt, whether it be with his family or anyone else, according to Bill Thompson. He never did anything in jail, and there's nobody in there that would argue he told him he did it. He doesn't talk about his case with anybody. Upon his first appearance in court, he stood silent, and Koberger has maintained that stance the entire time. And let's be pretty fair here. This is almost 4 full years, and the first thing you heard from him is this appeal. Other than him accepting the plea deal, right? So I think that's a hell of a constitution, even especially if you did do it, right? And you're arguing you didn't do it. This is extremely unusual for the accused to be as silent as they are, as he is. I'm sorry, and that's really, really profound if you think it through. It's kind of shocking that all this time has passed. That during the proceedings himself, he wasn't slipping messages to the outside world, or there wasn't anybody that was close to him that he could communicate with to get out. And I'm sure that he could have done that. I'm just kind of shocked, just in all fairness. He seems capable of conversation. He seems competent to maintain conversation. He has the capacity to converse and interact with people. All of these things are true. We know that because of his position at the school, with the interactions in the DMV and the little notes to his family or siblings, and the way he talked when he addressed the court for his plea deal. So he's more than capable and competent, it seems, enough to have said something in his own defense. And it never came forward. And that's exactly here's the funny thing. That's exactly what you're supposed to do as the client, as the defendant, as the accused, is to remain silent. There was no plotting. There was nothing that he said in messages. There was nothing that he said in communications with anybody outside of what we'll never know he had with his attorney, but no communications to which he was trying to tell the public he was innocent. He didn't say things in letters that went out to his family that would have been exposed to like they leaked every fucking thing, right? Everything to make him look like a fucking psychopath. And you could rest assured if he was writing letters to his parents or to family members or to anybody, it's rather shocking that as a defendant, he's still able to do what's the right thing, which is to remain silent. I don't know. I don't remember her saying that he wasn't participating in his own defense. I don't remember that. And I think that I highly doubt Hitler is going to grant an appeal. Okay. And I say that because the justice system on that level is what it is. It just is what it is, and they're going to do what they're going to do. I mean, they're jumping up and down and patting each other on the back and cracking champagne bottles when they got him when he decided he was going to take a plea. But let's be honest, they were holding a gun to his head. many guns. They were threatening him with the firing squad, with a quick dispatch of once he was shown to be guilty. And so all of the media coverage, all of the statements made, it's just crazy. But there's a couple things said that I think are telling. When the inmates that interacted with him spoke up, they said Brian would talk about any part of your case and want to know things about you. He would be very helpful. He watched TV every time something came out about his case. But the minute they started talking about his family, he turned off the TV and walked out. And then he contacted his sister and told her to lawyer up. Yeah, I don't think they want this case to come to light. But I don't think that Hitler. I think Hitler is, and what we're seeing in this case is nationwide, in a lot of courtrooms, in a lot of places where there's the police and the prosecutor. I think you're seeing what happened with Brian Koberger. It's pretty consistent across the country. No, it's not. He filed with an intent to appeal the case, but it's got to go before the judge that took the plea deal. If that judge accepts or gives him the capacity to appeal, I don't know that appeal. It's an appellate court that would then hear it. I don't think that would include Judge Hitler. So I'm not. I guess who would know would be the Indie Zone. Miss Potts might know. Lucy might know. But I think that the process he's in now, and his intent to appeal, has to be presented to Judge Hitler, and then Judge Hitler has to agree, and then it goes on to an appellate court. Right? That's my understanding. Which again, don't take it as gospel. Double check what I'm saying. But Judge Hitler wouldn't hear the appeal on miscarriage of justice, because he was the judge that was in the case that he's arguing as a miscarriage of justice. So I think it would be a miscarriage of justice if the appeal was then heard by the judge that took the plea deal and made all those motions and rulings on all those applications that Ann presented to him. I think that has to be looked at an outside party. If Hitler agrees. If he doesn't, then he still has the chance to go around Hitler. But it would just make it a much more complicated, longer process. It's going to be interesting to see if Brian does have counsel. I don't know that I would want counsel assigned again. That's going to be very telling as this moves towards the date for a hearing, to what his counsel may or may not be. I would hope that he gets some kind of assistance from counsel. But I'm going to say this too, and I'm not so sure that he doesn't have the capacity to argue his points himself in front of that court. I'm not so sure that would ever do him any good if he wins his appeal. It may or may not. I don't know what stance he wants to take. If he's competent and he can communicate well and he understands the law and he can write motions and he can argue the finer points of what needs to be argued to win his right to appeal, then there's no argument. It makes Ann's arguments moot when she talks about his autism and other things. And to be very honest with you, like I have said to you, I've multiple times consulted lawyers only to take and do my own charges myself. And I was pretty successful at that. I think I've got more wins than I have losses. I never lost when I did it myself. Let me put it that way. So on the last few charges that let's say three or four times I took over my own charges and won. But charges prior to that, I always look for counsel. And in a couple of cases, I used public defenders, and they always want to push you to a plea bargain. It's almost as if that's the solution to every single person that's charged with a crime. And I know I'm not telling you guys anything you're not aware of, but it's pretty fucking sad. Yeah, he can go above Hitler if Hitler denies. And I think if Hitler even approves, it's not Hitler that hears the appeal. That's how I think it works. I think it'd be rather fucking insane to have the judge that took a plea deal then stand and then made all the decisions to get you to where you were that made the plea deal. Be told that his decisions were fucked up and wrong, whether you say them in pleasant terms or not. You're going to argue. If you're going to go to an appeal and you're going to show a miscarriage of justice, I think the strongest argument Brian has is twofold. One is Ann openly in court saying she didn't have enough time to meet to properly defend her client. I think the late discovery dump is also problematic. And I think that late discovery dump aggravated the position Ann Taylor was in into her capacity to defend him properly. That's why I said in court, if she was out to protect herself or even her client, she may have stated to the court that she recommended, she recommended he not. I recommend personally to my client that he not take this deal. Yeah, well, Hitler did a lot of things, and I think Idaho law, and I think the way that all of this stuff went down for that tip and the way that DNA was used to hang this kid, basically, I think that needs to move to the federal court system. I think there needs to be rules. I also think that in all fairness, that the rules of discovery need to be updated to 2026 instead of 1875. This bullshit that Bill Thompson coming out immediately. We have 51 terabytes of data. Yeah, we don't give a fuck about your 51 terabytes. Essentially, what we want is the data that you put in that arrest warrant. That's essentially where we wanted to start. And the fact that Ann allowed a delay of game, right? She allowed an extension of months and months from January till June. I think June 6th was supposed to be the preliminary hearing. And just prior to the preliminary hearing, Hitler gets an indictment against the guy. I really think that she really dropped the ball there, because that probable cause affidavit didn't support the accusation against Brian Kohlberger. It supported that he was a person of interest, but there was no evidentiary information in that argument to say Brian Kohlberger was the perpetrator. I don't really think this would have got out of the preliminary hearing. I think the preliminary hearing would have been, especially in front of Judge. I don't think Judge would have hesitated to say, how can you be so sure this car is the same as that car? Right? And at that point, they would have had to have looked at his vehicle. Everything would have been crunched into a 14 to 21 day time period. So let's say he was arrested January 1st as an example. I think it was the 29th of December. Well, his hearing, if he was arrested on the 1st, would have had to been done by January 22nd. That would have been 21 days or 3 weeks. And Cracker Claus would have had to produce evidence for his argument. And that would never have been possible. I don't care what intimidating you by saying I got 51 terabytes of data. I just said, well, yeah, bring it. Bring it. And proceeded with the preliminary hearing. I think that was a big drop of the ball. I think another big drop of the ball was not maintaining his right to a speedy trial. There was a second bite at the apple where I don't think the prosecution was anywhere close to being able to present an open and closed case that Brian Kohlberger committed these murders within the speedy trial time limits, which I think is 90 days or 6 months or something, one of those two. I think she dropped the ball by waiving the speedy trial. I don't think she should have done that either. Those, just so you know, folks, this is why I say this, and I want you to listen to this very carefully. The preliminary hearing and the right to a speedy trial empower the defendant more than any other time in this process. That's why those two things exist. The power now is given to the defendant, and it puts the prosecution on its back foot. But if you go sit in a courtroom, and I think a lot of you should, go sit in a courtroom. Just be an observer in a local courtroom. And watch how many attorneys waive the preliminary hearing. Virtually every single case, the judge says, I'll enter a not guilty plea on your behalf. Counselor, would you like to waive the preliminary hearing? And the district attorney, or not the district attorney, the free lawyer, whatever you want, public defender would waives the preliminary hearing. That's just bullshit. You should never do that, ever. I'm telling you, never, ever, 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 ever do that. And the same thing with your right to a speedy trial. You don't waive those two rights. Those rights are there to benefit you. They're to force the government to show their hand immediately. And once they show their hand, right? Here's what happens. In a preliminary hearing, if they show their hand and their hand is strong enough that the court allows it to move forward to trial, right? And then your next level of interference would be a speedy trial in 90 days, right? That's a period of time where then you're either going to take a plea or not take a plea. So the process can be, if you committed the fucking crime and they come up and they say, here's a video of Sergeant Friday with a gun in his hand pointing it at a store clerk. What the fuck? At that point, have the preliminary hearing, and now you got 90 days to a speedy trial. You may be able to solve it. I mean, if depending on how strong your evidence is. In this case, the evidence was just opinions. It's opinions. The fact that Brian Koberger turned off his phone is true, but Cy Ray came out and said he did that all the time. So on that little area where you got 90 days, where they want to claim, or they collected all the photos from his phone, and later on in the fucking case they want to say his thumbs up was a celebratory signal to the murders. None of that stuff would have been squashed, especially in an early part of a speedy trial. They had years to do. That's the downfall to the years they spent bashing this dude and framing this dude in the media. It's just absolutely insane. That's why the 90 days or 6 months, I think it's 90 days, but it could be 6 months. Your right to a speedy trial needs to be respected. You need to have that come forward. And you need to have your preliminary hearing. And I think those areas, Ann really fucking, she fell down. But let me just say, Ann Taylor fell down because Ann Taylor this is the way the system works. The system doesn't have preliminary hearings. The system doesn't have right to speedy trial. And this gives them the chance to keep you locked up forever. And the longer you're in jail, the worse it becomes for your mental capacity to make a good, sound decision. And the more it looks like you're never going to get out of there. I don't know how many of you have been in jail, but it's very fucking daunting, man. It's not a pleasant experience, even if you're around decent guys. And when I was in jail, I was never around any threat of getting beat up or killed. None of those experiences were any part of my time in jail. But just the fact that you're locked in a cage, right? And you come out for an hour a day or whatever the fuck your circumstances are. I mean, you don't even know what freedom is until you get locked into a jail cell. And it just wears you the fuck out, right? After a while, you become part of, you become part of your environment. You literally become part of your fucking environment. And your outlook on life is slowly every day, every hour, every minute, your outlook on life going forward, your future. It's just, that's it. You're stuck in a fucking cage. That's your future. Now, for those people that have actually committed crimes, then that's what you earned it, right? You bought your fucking ticket to prison or to jail. And that's the consequence of committing crimes if you're caught. But if caught or if accused, as an example, I was accused of many crimes and only put in jail once. And what did I get, a 90-day sentence? So I had to serve 60 days. So it wasn't the worst thing that ever happened to me. I had worse things happen to me in my family home when I was a young kid. So I've experienced worse than that. So, and I knew I only had 60 days I was getting out. Canada is much different. I think Canada is quite a bit different because you're under British rule. Right? You guys isn't the Queen of England and all that other bullshit part of Canada? Yeah, I don't like I don't like many Western countries anymore because of their governments. I think the governments of most Western countries are just fucked. I like to think I'm pretty tough, but I know my ass would never make it. Yeah, you would make it, but you just wouldn't. It's just fucked up, man. It's not a pleasant place to be, and it's not meant to be a pleasant place. And if you commit crimes, I recommend you don't commit crimes, and you never have to experience that or learn anything about that stupid shit. Because I'm going to put a link in here if anybody wants to come up. Copy. Let's see here. It's just a terrible place to be, man. There's a link. Anybody? Look at that. YouTube rejected your comment. This is fairly common when sharing a link. You may need to share a link another way. Really? How the fuck do I share a link another way? What do you mean YouTube rejected my comment? What kind of nonsense is that? Ain't that some bullshit? Maybe I got to do it directly. That's it. I got to do it directly on YouTube. My God, it's like dealing with a fucking old hen. For God's sakes. No booty bandits in our jail. Yeah, okay. I've never been in court or jail. Enjoy my freedom too much. Yeah. Yeah. The arguments I think Koberger are going to make are going to revolve strictly around that late data dump. And the way Ann mishandled that data dump. And like I'm being told that it didn't happen, but I was under the impression from what I heard, not because I heard it from a streamer, but because for some reason I think I saw it in a clip from the court or somewhere that Hitler helped bring these two sides together. So if that's the case, then that's also a miscarriage of justice. Hitler had no business being a part of that. Yeah, I had a couple of prison guards that were cool when I was in jail. Wow, this is a good comment. Warning label. Ooh. Nina. Bioinformatics was used in the SNP. By the time it hits Othram, it is analytical, not biological. Bioinformatics fills in the empty spaces analytically. Interesting. I met a prison. Yeah, I've met. I actually, when I was big into boating. I was in a big way. I was into boating, and I met a lot of prison guards and policemen, and especially at the bar where this marina is, the bar at the marina, and they're a pretty fucked up group of individuals, right? Yeah, they banned cigarettes in our system too. Yeah, I think you're right. That's how they made the sample bigger. This is something Americans, I think, are misled about. There is some information about DNA that isn't absolutely accurate. I mean, unknown DNA it's like when you test whether I'm the father of your child or not. It's a statistical comparison. So it's not like there's a thing in your DNA, one single thing that says, yeah, he's clearly the father. It's an accumulation of markers. And then the statistics come into play. And the statistics oftentimes, if not all the time, are dependent upon certain community parameters. So let's say I live in a black community and a black woman says I'm the father, right? Now, if there's only a few white guys in the community, you're going to see that my markers, not all of them are going to match that child, but more of my markers are going to match that child than black guys in the community, if I'm the father. But let me just be clear here. Your DNA, for the most part, is the same as my DNA. There's a very small difference between DNA. In some states, paternity would be assigned to a person if they're 90% or above of their markers match the child's markers. And in some states, it's even lower than that. I think New York is lower than that. So there is statistical analysis done with this. Yet we're close to chimpanzees too. And it's in that statistical analysis and the interpretation of the person doing the work that plays a role in this. That's why you got that one case in Colorado or somewhere where more than 1,000 DNA samples were manipulated or were determined by a woman to belong to the accused. And many of them were not. You don't really hear anything about that case too much because everybody watches these crime shows and everybody is like, DNA is DNA. If it's yours, it's yours. And there's some circumstances based on the lab work, like with this IgG stuff, where that may not in fact be true. Like it's just strange. No, I think that woman did it intentionally. She was like a superstar. She was a rock star. I don't know how she got caught either, but she did the work on over 1,000 cases. So it's not unheard of, because that science is something like you can understand a fingerprint without going to college. You can understand that, but the work that they do for DNA isn't that simple. And there is human interaction with the information that's extracted. And then there's statistics that are used. And then it's more complicated than a fingerprint. And so I'm not like a big lover of the DNA stuff. I just think there's too much room because there's human error, an element of human error. And I think that if you tamper with the sample, I think if you get, that's the other part that I have a real problem with. Regardless of how sound they argue that science is, whatever sample you got from the crime scene is the sample you got, right? And for them to then go forward and extrapolate without actually, see, this is why I say the case was done wrong. So we have a sample off the nice sheet, right? They shouldn't have tampered with it. They shouldn't have IgG'd it. If their review of the video and their other information led them to a suspect or any suspect, you compare those suspects to that DNA sample, right? Right. It may be the data from it, but I mean, it still isn't present in your hand when you get the sample, right? So it's an extrapolation. I'm sorry. I just don't think that's fair. I don't think you should take the data that sample gives you, right? And then increase the sample, the data itself around the sample. No, I don't think that I think that's tampering with evidence. I'm probably dead wrong, but I'm fucking hard-headed. I'm hard-headed. Look, you got what you got. If you got 2 pieces of a fingerprint, I mean, you're gonna have a computer program extrapolate that out to a full fingerprint and start comparing it to people, and the answer is no. You didn't collect a full fingerprint from the crime scene. You collected not even a part of a fingerprint. I mean, it'd be like making the argument that you shot somebody with a gun and the bullet broke into pieces, right? It fragmented, and they're going to put it back together in some way with missing parts, and they're going to argue that that's the bullet that came from your gun. I mean, I don't know. How do you do that? The bullet passes through, it shoots you, passes through you, and hits a concrete fucking block. And then they pick up what's left of the bullet. And then they're going to take pictures of it, put it in a computer and reconstruct it and argue that was your gun. They don't do that. Why are they doing that with DNA? That's what I mean. It's a piece of evidence that you recover from the crime scene. It is what it is. And I know we want to catch the killer. Don't get me wrong. I know we want these people like that off the streets. Right? But I think that what you do has to be plainly understood by the public. Not some fucking witchcraft move in a scientific lab. Right? Not some knife sheet that was on the floor but was on the bed but really didn't have any of the victim's blood on it, but had DNA from other men on it in the form of blood and that. Man, oh man. I don't even know how that they had the balls to use that. But, you know, that's the way the police are. They got the biggest balls, and not the police, the prosecutors. Yeah, you don't know what they did. I mean, is the process of amplification, is there room for error? What is the percentage of error that's possible when you're amplifying this data? I mean, come on now. You know, all that needs to be disclosed. And the jurors, if it goes to trial, need to see that. Is it 100% perfect? Probably not. Are there times where they amplify it and lead them to the wrong suspect? I'm sure it has. I was listening to someone say that one of the things that hurts Kohlberger is they argue it was a K-bar knife and that he had bought a K-bar knife and there was no K-bar knife found amongst anything where they searched. And I'm not too sure that that's the truth. She's a good lawyer, too. I like her. Burkhardt or something like that. But I think that's why I was saying in the stream the other day, they did recover a knife from Brian Kohlberger's home. But they didn't identify the type of knife it was. And I would bet anybody $100 that that's a K-bar knife they took from Pennsylvania out of Brian's closet. Let me just tell, if he even bought it. There's the other question: did he even buy the K-bar knife? I don't know. No, see, we've never seen any receipts to verify that accusation. We hear the story. I mean, we hear all their fucking stories. That thumb up photo was a victory dance for Kohlberger. We hear all of these crazy stories on every piece of evidence they want to argue proves his guilt. But where's the evidence to support their fucking story? That's the catch-22 with all of this. And if they got it, why was it never produced? Why is it all still sealed and being hidden? That's just kind of crazy. I think we all can agree on that point. And I don't know really how that's ever going to get dragged out of them. What if the sheath were never found? Well, that's a good question. Brian Kohlberger was a person of interest in November, long before they ever got to a DNA. Brian Kohlberger's name was in the mix long before the DNA ever came forward. So why he was in the mix, how he got in the mix is really not clear. But from what I've seen, I think somewhere around November 29th or somewhere within 2 weeks of the crime, his name was in a list of people of interest, at least. Well, what if they found the knife in Brian's parents' home in Pennsylvania and there was not a single trace of it being used at all, ever, and no blood on it? That would mean the sheath in Idaho, were you going to argue that's Brian's sheath because you found the K-bar knife in his closet in Pennsylvania? And the missing sheath proves that his knife was the murder weapon, but that knife is perfectly clean. There's no blood, no DNA, no nothing on it, but his from the handle. I mean, that's what I mean. That's why when you look at the evidence collected from the Pittsburgh search warrant, it's I don't know, that bothers me. Certain things bother me because they shouldn't exist. Don't tell me about a fillet knife. Don't tell me about a folding knife, and then tell me about a third knife that's just a knife. There's no such thing as a knife as just a knife. There just isn't. Not in the histories of fucking mankind. A machete is a knife, isn't it? What about those things they put on the end of a rifle in the Army? What are those things called? That's a knife. I mean, knives all have identifying names. Why they left that out of the evidence collection is just shocking to me. I think Dago has a copy of that. But have any of you ever seen that list? A bayonet. Yeah, that's a knife. But it's called a bayonet. But it's a knife. Has anybody ever seen the list of evidence collected in Pennsylvania? Have any of you seen that? Well, don't you find it disturbing that the knife is just labeled as knife with no dimension listed, no size listed, no purpose listed? I find that very disturbing. And they do this throughout the whole case. When things aren't going to benefit them, they don't get any attention. Just imagine if that was a K-bar knife found in Pennsylvania. Yeah, they have more detail than exactly. Yeah, they hedge their bets. They certainly do. They got DNA on the sheet that's not Brian's, but they're not going to test it. What did they do? Didn't Ann say what they did? They then took fingerprint powder and covered the sheath with fingerprint powder, looking for fingerprints. You guys remember the early arguments that were being made? They didn't swab the button snap because they wanted to check for a fingerprint. Now we're being told that they swabbed, and we've been told for years it was the button snap, inside the button snap. Then we were told that there were 3 locations that they checked, right? And it's just a mess, man. How can you for years tell us it was in the button snap, right? And then now you're telling us it's on the button strap. But that's just how the fuck does that happen? No, the DNA wouldn't have lived in the snap because it was brass. That's a funny story. I brought that brass out because there was a girl came out on one of these. She had her stream. She looked like Drip Drop, Crime Circus dude. She had this whole persona, and she had on a mask like he did, and she was casually talking, and she mentioned why bullet casings are never really checked for DNA because brass destroys DNA, and she went on talking. Well, that same day after I heard that, it dawned on me, well, the button slaps on all these knives are brass. They're either stainless or brass. But most often they're brass. And I came out in a stream on Dago's channel and I brought that up. And there was another streamer, he's gone now. Or he might be out there. I haven't heard about him in a long time. But boy, he would get mad. But I came out and I brought the point forward that if that DNA was found inside the button snap, then the DNA is non-viable because the button snap is brass. And then that clicked on. Everybody's been aware of that ever since. Yeah, the hair in Ethan's hand is a big question. The hair attached to the bed frame is a big question. Yeah, maybe, Mason. You might be right. You might be right, but it's objectionable that would be listed as just knife. There's no reason to make that statement. There's no reason at all to make that statement. Double-edged, single-edged, serrated. There's a whole bunch of titles that go along with the term. To say, if I tell you I have a knife, can you in your mind determine what kind of knife I have? And the answer is no. Mason, I got a knife. Well, what does that tell you? Right. Yeah, you can forge your own knife. There's no doubt. But my point is, no knife is just called knife. There's an omission, an intentional omission in that list about that particular item that they found in his home. Right? Butterfly knife, steak knife, Perry knife, bread knife, butter knife, right? Perry knife. You got the pocket knife. You got a Swiss Army knife. You've got. I mean, you go on and on and on and on and on. And there is no knife that's ever been made by human beings that hasn't been given a name. And that's, I'm going to get off this topic, but that's the problem when you have Asperger's. Stuff like that just disturbs you. How in the fuck can you define the 2 of the 3 knives with proper names to them and just leave one called knife? I mean, what the fuck? It's like saying a gun. He shot me with a gun. Well, what kind of gun are we talking about here? Right? Isn't that the question? He was shot with a gun. Yeah. Yeah, they never further tested as far as any of us know. You're correct. There's so much intentional not looking. And like maybe Cy Ray is right. Maybe they do have direct evidence of Brian entering that home, but they never produced it in court. They never built a case around that. Why the fuck wouldn't you? You can't explain why they wouldn't. There's no good way to explain that. That's what I mean. Cy Ray says, if you've seen what I've seen, well, why haven't we seen what you've seen? And you're a cell phone fucking expert. And so under what circumstances should you be seeing things we haven't seen? I know you're part of the defense team, but for God's sakes. When did that picture become available to the fucking defense? When? When did this so-called evidence that's damning to Kohberger become available to the defense? Yeah, it's just, this is what I mean. This is the frustrating part of this entire case. Everybody, my opinion is I don't have a clue who murdered them 4 people. And I really don't care what this kid did in court. There was, in my opinion, and in many people's opinion, there was never any direct link to Brian's presence in that home during the times that they say the crime was committed. And that is very important. At least most people acknowledge that that's very important. And yet here we are. Finally, he's going to appeal. Let's see if Hitler allows him to appeal. If not, he's got to, I'm sure Hitler's not going to. I'm sure Hitler, I wouldn't be surprised that him saying something like, Brian, I'm surprised to see you back here, Mr. Kohberger. He's going to say something stupid because that's the kind of guy he is. That's going to play on the fucking, we'll be able to make fucking memes out of Hitler. Yeah, Hitler, yeah. If the only thing is that transfer DNA, even if it's Brian's, if Brian didn't admit, or if Brian, for example, so if Brian didn't admit, we know unequivocally for sure that the information, and that's the other thing too, that Cy, that smug little motherfucker, thanks for using that word. What a smug prick he is. Because what was stated by the prosecution denies any information being added to what they had. In other words, if they knew all along Brian did it and they had proof of it and didn't use that proof and then stood in a fucking courtroom and said what Bill Thompson, the cracker clause, said, then none of that evidence can be brought out to be used in this case. I mean, I think they dug as much of a hole for themselves as Brian dug for himself when he pled guilty. I think what Brian should have done is dismiss counsel. He should have dismissed counsel is what he should have done. Not taking a plea deal. He should have fired Ann. And his argument to the court should have been, she doesn't have my best interest in mind. She wants me to take a plea deal and I didn't commit the crime. And a lawyer that thinks I'm guilty is no lawyer that can actually defend me in court. This woman doesn't meet the level that I require for a proper defense. And therefore, Your Honor, this attorney needs to be terminated. Do you have other counsel available? At this point, no, Your Honor, but I'm actively going to start looking. And I don't know if the judge could have stopped him from doing that. That would have been the better move for him. I did that in court twice. 2 different cases I fired the lawyer. Oh, they were absolutely relieved not to have to provide their non-evidence. They drowned the public in the fact the kid's a stalker. They drowned the public that he's inappropriate with women. None of this stuff is provable. It's not true. And even if it were true, there's no evidence to support the statements. And so therefore, what do you go to court with? A rumor that you spread to the news, mainstream media? Your media mouths? You can't convict somebody on the, well, they did Trump on some of the stuff. I imagine, yeah, you can. But it's just kind of crazy, folks. That fucking cracker clause said what he said in open court. There's no relationship between Mr. Kohberger and the residents. There's no relationship that we could find between Mr. Kohberger and the victims. Well, then why are you accusing him of murder? No relationship is no relationship up to and including the murder, as far as I'm concerned. That's a pretty fucking stout statement. And Cy Ray wants to stick. Well, Brian went to places where he could overlook the whole town. And there are places that are dark, and there are places that are out of the way, and there are places that would support stargazing. So which is it, Cy Ray? Who the fuck are you to determine what was in that kid's head and what he was doing? You can't make that. You're guessing. That's your theory. It's not truth. The only one that knows is Brian. Imagine demanding this kid provide an alibi. And its only alibi is I was out driving around. And you know that he was out driving around 23 fucking times prior. And God knows how many more times you could have actually assimilated that he drove around. Maybe not in those areas, but in different directions drove around. I'm sure that wasn't the only direction Brian Koberger drove in. I'm sure there's other directions that consistently show him going certain directions, going different ways. Right? Right. Even if he said he was home alone. Well, that would have been a bad alibi. Well, no, maybe it wouldn't have been a bad. No, because his phone and his car were moving. His phone and his car were moving. So that would have been a terrible alibi. That wouldn't have worked. You couldn't say that. You had to say with what they know to be true. You were out driving around. There's no reason. Why would you argue against that? It was like when I was charged with burglary. Well, you were in that building. Yeah. You were in that hallway. Yeah. Yeah, I was. I was painting. Well, you broke into that apartment. No, I didn't. Well, we found your fingerprints. Yeah. Yeah, okay. Well, you did it. No, I didn't. Yeah, you did. No, I didn't. Well, who else could have done it? I don't know. I'm not the police. I don't care whether you like my alibi or not. I don't care if I place myself in the vicinity of your crime. In this particular case, for me, it was in the hallway that I painted that a door was removed and an apartment was robbed and the door was replaced under the hinges. That really happened. And factually, I really did it. But I wouldn't admit to it. And that case got thrown out. So alibis aren't always a key to freedom. Because your alibi, my alibi was, and I didn't even need to say it. It was obvious. I was the maintenance man in a hallway painting all the doors and all the trim, the ceiling and the walls. That's what I was doing. I'm sure you would find my fingerprints in other locations than his door. Your windowsills, the walls. I'm sure if you look close enough, you'd find my fingerprints all over the fucking place. So how does my presence of my fingerprint mean that I broke into this apartment and stole this guy's guns? It don't. He will be for the process of granting the appeal or not, I suspect. That's how it works. And he probably is going to deny it. I mean, we all expect that, but there's the other side of that. It's also possible he doesn't. It's also possible, let's not forget, it's also possible the claims that Brian Koberger are making are accurate. I mean, you've got to entertain the possibility that what he's sharing and what he calls as a miscarriage of justice is true. Well, they also found a handgun, but these were found in Brian's closet or in Brian's bedroom, to be more. They found the 9mm handgun. They found 2 clips. They found ammunition. They found 3 knives, right? A fillet knife, a folding knife, and a knife. Whatever the fuck that is. So this is all logged as evidence. They found gloves. They found a bunch of stupid things, man. None of it connected to the crime, obviously. You know, and then there's that other thought that property was under surveillance by the feds. And the feds have a photo of Brian going into that house. There's people out there suggesting it. I think maybe even Gonclaves or others. Well, then why wasn't that produced to the court? I mean, I don't understand. Why wouldn't that have been produced? Under what pretense would the government want to keep that a secret? Even if they were surveilling a different house for a different reason, even if it was a terrorist reason, they could have brought that into the court. They could have had a closed jury. They could have closed the courtroom to just the jury. if this went to trial. They could have produced this evidence and kept it secret, right? They could have gotten non-disclosure agreements from the. I mean, I don't know what the fuck would be over in that little corner of the world, but you know, in today's world, you don't know what you don't know. So if there was some federal involvement, surveillance of that area for whatever reason, and evidence that connects somebody to committing a quadruple homicide was produced through that surveillance, then I can't imagine on any fucking corner of the universe where you wouldn't have produced that. Yeah, I don't know either. I don't know why they didn't just question the guy. They didn't need IgG. If Brian's DNA matches the DNA on the sheath, they didn't need IgG. If once Brian became a suspect, they should have brought him in for questioning, right? So what was the need for IgG and to run around and get in the databases you don't belong in, to go through a secret route with the FBI? What was the point? Right? If he was a suspect or a person of interest, you should have brought him in like you did all these other people. Oh, he had 17,000 tips. Oh, well, I don't give a fuck if you had 17 trillion tips, asshole. If this guy's name was on a list because he owned a similar vehicle, that's enough to go question the guy. He's a person of interest. He's a fantastic person of interest. I've never disagreed with that ever. Ever. Right? That could even be his car screaming away at that time. That doesn't mean that the person in that car committed this crime. There's as many reasons to argue that car drove away fast for more reasons than murder. A drug deal gone bad, right? I mean, there's just so many things that you can come up with that are absolute sensical, legitimate reasons. So, you know, I don't know. Maybe he was in his car parked and he was going to go make a drug deal and the guy came out and threatened him and Brian just took off, right? And the fact is, like, if you're going to depend on the fact that there was no front license plate, well, I beg you to go look at the car that was wrapped in green that was at the crime scene the day the house was tore down. For all practical purposes, that vehicle did not have a front license plate, but upon serious close examination, because it was broad fucking daylight and you had the right camera angle, you could see that the front license plate was bent back under the bumper. So it did have a license plate. But if that were moving at night with its headlights on, that car would not show a front license plate, and that belonged to one of the fucking people that were part of the Idaho Police Department. So, I mean, on the day they tore the house down, there's an Elantra, and at first glance, literally, there's no front license plate as you're looking at the vehicle. But as the vehicle makes the left onto Queen Road from that alleyway where they claim Brian Koberger parked up at the hill, when it made the left onto Queen Road to head towards exiting the neighborhood, you could see from a side angle that the license plate had been bent backwards. So this is what I'm saying. There's no evidence that no license plate means the car belongs to Brian. I mean, not for nothing. It wouldn't. You could have sent someone like Twiz to drive around and find the Elantras and see how many of them had license plates and taken pictures of multiple Elantras with no front license plate. That's how simple that would be to exclude your car. Well, I'm not the only guy without a license plate. Well, how can you make that claim? Well, here's 75 pictures of other Elantras our investigator took pictures of in the Moscow area, moving through the town, moving around, blah, 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 whatever. Don't tell me that I got a truck with no front license plate. New York requires it. I don't have it. Give me a ticket. I don't give a fuck. I had a Corvette with no front license plate because the license plate bracket just makes the front of the car look ugly. And the license plate is an eyesore on the front of that car. It was one of those new C8s. No. So, but here, my argument is simple. Lack of a license plate isn't identification of the ownership of the car. It isn't. They argue that Brian Koberger went and registered a vehicle and changed them from Pennsylvania to Washington. Well, his registration was due to be renewed. And since he was going to maintain residency in Washington, he renewed his registration for the state of Washington, which would be his residence during the time he's going to be in school for the next few years. There's nothing nefarious or criminal or secret about that, right? Oh, yeah. You don't want to go off the side of the road and into a swamp. Yeah, that sucks, man. Yeah, you got to be careful. No matter what you're driving, Corvette, Lamborghini, fucking Dodge Dart, no matter what you're driving, right? Be careful. So let me think. I don't even know how long I've been. Look, I put a link in there. How fucked up am I? I put a link in the back room, and then I'm not in the back room to know if anybody joined using that link. How funny is that? That's just effed up. I don't see any Twiz. I don't see any Morning Star. I don't see any of that. Hmm. Yeah, that's Steve G. Somebody just pointed that out. There are other vantage points of the house that showed where he parked. Yeah, okay. Let me see here. Let me see here. They are Koberger's first cousins from his aunt in Vegas. Yeah. Pattern of life would be in mitigation stage, as Cyrus said during mitigation. It would explain why the murders happened. I don't think so. I don't suspect that his behavior would have been an issue. I don't think what he did there is connected to the crime. At least there's no evidence to connect it to the crime. You can make all the assumptions you want. You can, and that's the thing. You can tell your story to the jury. That's what it is. It ends up being a story. But Koberger short-circuited that, and I think on the advice of counsel. I think the advice of counsel was bullshit. Just shouldn't be. Right? Listen, I know this to be true. When I was in court and I demanded that I be allowed to plead guilty, my lawyer addressed the court and said, Your Honor, against my advice, my client would like to address the court. And I addressed the court and I said, I'm here to plead guilty. And my lawyer literally made that statement before I was able to say that I plead guilty. And and I think that you would do that. That also helps protect you against what Brian is filing now. Right? That would protect the attorney. My advice is for you not to plead guilty. You're here pleading guilty. So you're not going to come back and say that you had insufficient advice from counsel. And the judge asked that. And I had to confirm. He's telling me not to, but I'm telling you I committed the crime. I belong in jail. And in this case, Ann didn't even make any effort to cover her ass. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see what we're going to see. I don't know if there's been no more document releases today, correct? Is it safe to make that statement for those of you that watch the documents? If any of you are doing that, yeah, we're all listening to you. Sometimes it's nice to bring someone up and converse, but it's not necessary. Oh, it's 12:09 p.m. on the East Coast, the state of New York, the once great state of New York, now governed by a woman named Hochul, who's running commercials. I find this to be the best thing in the world. She's running the commercial that the law passed, the one big, beautiful bill that President Trump got passed, is allowing tuition to be paid to private schools through tax dollars that are collected for school. And she's arguing that that's gonna handicap the kids that are in school, the same kids that have been in school that don't know arithmetic in these city schools, don't know history, don't know science, okay? But they know everything about their genitals. The same schools where people graduate without the capacity to read. These are the schools that are failing the New Yorkers. And bad orange man has made it possible for people to be able to choose their own fucking school for their kids to go to. But, he's bad. You don't want your tax dollars spent on private schools where you yourself can send your kid to a successful fucking school. No, that's bad. He's taking tax money meant for your children's schooling that doesn't provide an education, and he's allowing that money to be spent in private schools where the educational success is a high rate. But you don't want to send your kid there, right? What a bunch of fucking assholes in this state. Yeah, that guy, that man, damn me. I can't wait to see what happens to the little supermarkets. Government subsidized supermarkets. So you're going to sell me a gallon of milk for $1, and you're going to bill the taxpayers $4 to make up the difference. It's insane. A gallon of milk is going to, it's going to cost a tremendous amount of money, not to the end user, but to the taxpayer. These governments, this kid's out of his mind. I don't even know how he got elected. I find it amazing. But I don't live in New York City, so that shit don't affect me. That's the other problem. A lot of shit happens around the country. A lot of it doesn't affect us personally or today or in the immediate future. And we just throw our arms up. Well, nothing we can do. It's fucking insane. Well, I don't know why private schooling is such a why you would try to make the argument that's a bad idea. I just don't get it. And I don't care if he's a citizen or not. I'm not arguing. The guy was elected mayor, but he's a communist. The fuck, that's going to ruin that city's in trouble. They know it's in trouble. The deficits in New York are out of control. And they're not doing themselves any good when it comes to federal assistance. They're getting their ass handed to them on that. As they should. So is Chicago, so is California. So are all these states that are more worried about illegal immigrants and your genitals than they're worried about your capacity to be an astronaut, rather than building your desire to be a pilot or a welder or a fucking plumber or a mathematician or a biologist. Those are the things that should be, inspired into the children that go to school. Not this bullshit about your genitals, your gender, global warming, how bad America is. Go fuck yourselves with that kind of education. I'd gag you on that bullshit. That's what a lot of these deep blue states do, especially the inner cities. They're just horrible that way. All anti-American, all pro-communism. They take your money and they spend it among their friends, and then they blame Trump for doing the same thing, to which he didn't do. They act like he's catering to his private donors that own private schools. What the fuck? What people does he know that owns private schools? It's across the country. Let's be clear. It's just fucking insane. The arguments they make are the arguments of what they do themselves with your money. That's the best thing about being in a blue area. They blame someone like me because I'm a middle of the road guy as being a racist. And yet they've never employed black people. I have. They've never attended and had friendship and family-like type relationships with black people. I certainly have. But I'm the racist. Why? Because I don't want to hear about your fucking gender issues. I don't want to talk about that amongst children. So what's their comeback? You're racist. You're this. You're that. It's always a fucking assault. And then we're the terrorists, but it's the blues that are burning the fucking cities down. It's the blues that attack law enforcement. Yeah, man, we live in a fucked up country. I think the people that are in blue or think blue, they should just all pack their bags and move. And I think the people that don't want to move with them, the people that oppose them, I'd be happy to pay some money forward so they could get their own land somewhere. Stick them all in fucking Washington or something, or in California, and then detonate a couple of nukes along the fault line and disconnect that fucking piece right from the country. Goodbye. You guys go over there and play with your genitals. We're going to stay here. And we're going to have our kids on the moon and Mars and other galaxies and that's what we're going to do. We have fucking all kinds of crazy, awesome stuff. Anyway, that's it for politics, too. I'm going to call this one a night. I got to take my my last steak out of the freezer and get that ready for tomorrow. At least get it to the fridge so that it defrosts. And then I got to go shopping. But I've held off shopping until everything in my freezer has been consumed. And it's nice when you're an adult and you're not like I remember as a kid, there were things in the freezer and refrigerator I wouldn't eat. And that's one of the best things about being an adult. Like I like jelly, but grape jelly. Gotta be grape. And you know, when I was a kid, it was strawberry jelly, it was peach jelly. Get that shit out of here. I want grape jelly. So yeah, that's the best part about being an adult. Everything in your refrigerator and cabinets are something you'll enjoy. So I'm making sure. The only thing I'm saving, I'm holding back on is I do have a. I did order and I haven't tried it yet. A frozen apple pie. I make cake. I make cookies. This time, yeah, Welch's is the best. This time I've got a. I forget the maker of the pie, but it's got good reviews, so I'm going to try this frozen pie. See how it turns out. All right, folks. Enough talk about pie. 3.19, is that what it is? Anyway, be good. Stay out of trouble. Don't get in trouble. If you do get in trouble, don't tell me. And be good. Glad the mic works. Glad the streaming system works. And we'll stay in touch with you.